And look, I already got some, the other side, some DevNexus swag, very sweet. And as usual, DevNexus makes the best swag. It's just like next level. Yeah, I'm excited about stupid thing.
Totally cool.
Special guest with me, Alex Dunford from Intercontinental Hotels Group, or as you might know it, IG Hotels. There's tons of them. You stayed at one, you will be staying at one, and for the purpose of our conversation, the interesting part is the software that behind like everything. I guess there is a lot of stuff is going on in hotel infrastructure that is software.
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically, I'm one of the senior engineers on our DevOps team. So we, as a team, we're kind of centralized DevOps as far as things like management, auditing of security analysis, that kind of stuff. General CI/CD process from IDE all the way to production deployment. So what that means is I get to interact and communicate with a lot of teams across IHG, everything from our web teams, our infrastructure teams, to our kind of internal services and applications that we use within the company. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yep. So basically, I hate the term DevOps team.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I have an obsession about terms like DevOps engineer and DevOps team that I hate with passion, because kind of defeats the purpose of the entire thing. But I know what you mean, right? You're basically the team that enables DevOps for everybody else, right? So everybody do DevOps, all the engineers do DevOps, but someone has to set up your Kubernetes and your CI/CD and your security scanners and whatnot.
Yeah.
So this is what your team does.
Exactly. So I mean, when you, especially at like enterprise, international level company, there's there's pros and cons to allowing individual teams to control certain processes and have their own standards as far as security analysis and stuff. And so I think you got it exactly right. We're more about enabling teams to fit, kind of an industry standard as well as internal standards for things like security, personal information, that kind of stuff. Because if we don't have that, if it's not coming from one place, then everyone will do.
Yeah, and obviously not everybody are proficient in all those nuances, so it will be probably not the top that you can expect from people who actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Hopefully we know what we're doing. The website hasn't fallen over yet, so at least,
that's good. That's good stuff.
No, but yeah, in general, we work a lot with the teams as well. That's one of the things that I actually get to do a lot of, is interact with the teams, understand what tools they're already using and how we can incorporate them in the overall enterprise process for CI/CD. And if we integrate with some kind of tool, we will work with the team to get that integrated, and we'll actually apply that across all of the teams. Say, hey, this is available for everyone to use. One of the advantages, I guess you could say, of having a centralized process.
Yeah, of course. And that brings me, your collaboration with the teams brings me to the question of developer productivity. Now, while it's not directly in your title or even the description that you gave me, you set up the tools, but you really do it for the purposes of compliance and security and like time to market and the release velocity and what's not. I assume you also get to think about, to talk about, to discuss productivity aspect of your developer teams.
Yeah, exactly. So I always think of it as kind of two pieces, right? There's the guardrails that we're putting in place to make sure that development is secure, that we are using best practices for certain things, as far as our usage of certain technologies, but we also have to balance that with the amount of friction that causes with development teams.
And the obvious question is, okay, there is some kind of a trade-off, right? you take it to one extreme, and the developers are not allowed to use any new dependency until you veto it, which takes 2 months, and that obviously hurdles productivity. On the other side, you just tell them, hey, you do you, and next time you know there are terrible vulnerabilities in the code, right?
Exactly.
So what are, how do you solve those trade-offs? What is the kind of the middle, the golden path that you can do to keep developers as productive as possible, but also have those guardrails in place?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because it's the question we think of almost every single day, right? Especially with new vulnerabilities coming into play at any given time, or new security tools, or I keep referencing security, but also things like code quality and code assurance, as well as auditing, right? You want to make sure who deployed the code that may have caused a problem in your lower environment, that kind of thing. And it's not so much that we want to have an eye on every single thing, but it's that we want teams and developers themselves to be more aware of what they're doing, as well as their management and, of course, the team leads. So when it comes to what we've done to try and, I guess, make the way a little more smooth, right? Lower that friction. So we actually leverage CloudBee's CI/CD, their CDRO project, product, as well as CloudBee CI. We've recently moved into Cloud, their EKS offering for that. And what that's allowed us to do is, so traditionally at IHG and probably many companies, individual development teams might have their own Jenkins instances, where they've had to manage that, and that includes things like keeping up on security updates, general version updates, all that kind of stuff, plugins. But we've rolled all of that into an enterprise level CI instance, and so what that means is we've been able to kind of take that burden off of the development teams and on us, but also while at the same time enabling processes that allow us to manage that in a smooth way. So, for example, we've developed a pipeline, we call it Universal Pipeline, and what it does is it allows any application team, whether they build with Gradle or with NPM or Maven, any of those tools, to use the exact same development pipeline and orchestrate it through CloudBee CDRO. And so what that does is it provides kind of a consistency across teams. If you've received a knowledge transfer on how to use the tool, it doesn't matter what team you're working on, you are using the exact same tool across the organization. And what that means is we can actually apply standards across everybody while having it be both a one-size-fits-all solution, and that everyone's using the pipeline, but also customizing it based on back-end configuration, kind of on a per-application basis for the application team's needs. So, like if there's an app that's a legacy application, say it's a monolith that's being decommissioned at some point, there's known test failures. Well, normally we'd be very strict about allowing the pipeline to continue and allow you to deploy in any environment based on your test failures. Well, for those teams, we can smooth the process out, lower the friction by adjusting the parameters and thresholds that allow them to get past that gate into production or whatever.
Yeah, that's very cool. And let me ask you, how do you know that you are successful, especially for the productivity angle, right? So you obviously know that you are successful for stuff like how fast you ship your code, you just measure it, or how many vulnerabilities you have, you just watch it. How do you know that you are successful in reducing friction and making the team more productive?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, a lot of it is based on what kind of feedback you receive from the teams. Like I mentioned before, we're in very constant contact with them, and we solicit feedback, positive and negative, about how the process is. So that's probably the most valuable in the sense that the developers themselves tell us, hey, this is terrible, we don't like using this, or hey, this is really great, this has been a massive improvement. So that's probably the number one thing. Now, that's obviously not very quantitative. It's very subjective. So what we've actually been working on recently, and what we're kind of continuing to build towards, is a robust suite of analytics that show us, for example, like the number of pull requests that are raised for a particular repository, how fast the builds are running for any given app, things like failure rates for security scans and code quality scans. Because all of those things translate into slower development time, right? If you're sitting there waiting for a pipeline to complete, letting it run a security scan only for it to fail, that's however much time wasted, right? So we're working on getting kind of direct metrics, I guess you could say, but we're building up the suite of data that allows us to make those decisions by kind of understanding what the pain points already are for developers and getting those out of the way.
That makes perfect sense. So, a couple of things. First of all, asking the developers, you kind of almost apologized for it. You shouldn't. You shouldn't, because I'll tell you my take on it. Productivity, the important one of, not less important than the objective metrics of productivity are the perceived metrics of productivity. Do people feel that they are being productive? And when we are talking about feelings and perceived notion, we are talking about social studies.
True.
It's basically how people feel about what they are doing. In social studies, have you ever heard the quote, anecdote is not plural of data? Or singular of data,
that sounds familiar,
like that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, it's exactly the other way around for social studies.
Mm-hmm.
In social studies, data is exactly the plural of anecdotes. You ask people, and then you create a study based on their answers to realize what's going on. And that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's absolutely data. It should complement stuff like the how fast your builds are running, but it's definitely not something that you can disregard, like, this is touchy-feely, we don't care about that. It's definitely perceived productivity of developers is as important as your absolute numbers of how fast the builds are running.
Yes.
Talking about how fast your builds are running, do you also measure local builds on the developer machines?
That's a really good question. So I would actually say like local development, IDE, and local machine stuff. That's actually a blind spot we have right now. So we are actually I recently had a great conversation with test containers who are here actually at DevNexus. If you're here, go stop by. But their tooling allows, so they have a newer product, Test Containers Cloud. You can run test containers in cloud, that's the name. But what you can also do, and of course it makes sense if you're trying to run it from, say, like Cloud VCI or EKS in general, but you can also run it locally. And what's nice about it is that if you're running those tests locally, it will build up the metrics on individual developer usage of those tests. And so we're looking into that as well as other products to leverage and kind of fill in that blind spot, because it's hard. It's
Shameless
difficult.
plug time! Shameless plug time. Gradle DevVelocity is exactly the tool that you're looking for. Exactly! It will do exactly that. It will monitor the build times. It will give you what it's called a Gradle build scan of each and every build that every developer runs, and it will give you the exact performance metrics of what is used, what is not, what is fast, what is slow, and obviously it also has the building tools to make it faster, like build cache, like a smart selection of tests, what we call the predictive test selection, like distributing tests across computes, both locally and in the cloud. It's exactly what you need, trust me. This is where you ask, but we are not all Gradle.
I was actually just about to ask that.
Perfect. Thank you very much for asking that. But yes, obviously, Gradle DevVelocity doesn't only work with Gradle. It works with Gradle, Maven, obviously, SBT, Bazel, whatever you build with.
NPM?
JVM only. For
Okay.
now.
Good to know.
We have some ideas on how to make it better.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it's JVM only for now. We would definitely, it's a valid question that we obviously get a lot. We're looking into expanding into other ecosystems. JVM, all of that. And this is exactly what is going to fill this last blind spot of local builds, both not only monitoring them but also improving them dramatically. So we have a Gradle build run here. Once you're done with that, you are transitioning to our salespeople. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I will. That sounds interesting.
But yeah, definitely you should see a demo. It might be like, oh, this is nice, because it's exactly that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I
With
appreciate
that,
it.
thank you very much, Alex. That was a great conversation. We learned a lot. You know what? DP Summit coming in September. Who knows? Maybe we and you will hear Alex speaking there and bringing the success story of implementing the velocity in ISG. Fingers crossed. Our next interview is coming up. Stay tuned. Thank